Students spend over 10 years of their lives in classroom settings, all with the goal of producing educated and capable adults. However, public school education has long been stagnant in regards to the methodologies and curriculum offered to students. Often following the banking model presented by Paulo Freire, educators must follow strict curriculum requirements and are unable to create tailored lesson plans for their students. The educational environment is almost entirely dictated by a combination of the curriculum, what will be taught, and the educator, who will be teaching, to provide the necessary knowledge to the student. But what if both of these aspects are skewed? Curriculum presented to students likely follows the ideology and history of white Americans throughout time. With such a narrow viewpoint of curriculum, little space is left for crucial multicultural lessons. This lack of inclusive curriculum leaves many students culturally underrepresented within the media they are most exposed to, the books in their own schools. We must acknowledge that the curriculum is rarely neutral. Apple argues that knowledge taught in schools is often written and decided by corporate entities that skew towards white, Anglo-centric viewpoints. George Counts poses the question, dare the school build a new social order? Currently, our schools are largely reflecting the old one, a system where multicultural representation is left behind rather than set as the foundation. In 2015, the American public school system reached a monumental tipping point. For the first time in history, minority student enrollment surpassed white student enrollment nationally. It was a demographic shift that federal projections had long anticipated, yet the educator workforce leading the classrooms has remained largely unchanged. This demographic change highlights the racial imbalance between students and teachers, which has been long-standing. Today, white educators make up approximately 80% of the public school workforce. While classrooms have slowly become vibrant, multicultural spaces, the leadership remains rooted in a singular demographic. This issue is not simply a workforce imbalance, but a systemic issue rooted in the curriculum being presented to all students. To understand the present, we must look back to who the system was originally built for. Historically, the public school system reflected national population patterns where both students and teachers were predominantly white. White students have benefited from this system for a significantly longer period than students of color. We see this as early as the beginning of American civilization, most clearly in the history of Native American boarding schools, where education was used as a tool for forced assimilation, guided by the ideology, kill the Indian, save the man. For over half a century, the law was, quote, separate but equal, established by Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, though we know equality was never the reality. Even after the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education ruling ended legal segregation, many hurdles remained. When a system is positioned to propel one group while allowing another to slip through the cracks, it creates a self-perpetuating cycle. Those who benefit most from the system are more likely to return to it. On the other hand, for students of color, a system that historically reinforced white values, culture, and religion may not always feel like an inviting career path. This demographic imbalance, combined with a curriculum lacking multicultural themes, creates a real concern for an education that does not resonate with students. When there is a cultural misalignment, teachers and students may struggle to relate lived experiences, religions, and family norms. As Lake points out, in the era of standardization, where rigid curriculum leaves little room for the curriculum of imagination, the small nuances of a classroom are imperative. Students and teachers alike bring their entire lives into the classroom, and when a curriculum doesn't reflect the student's world, engagement falls, students retreat, and the cycle continues. Of course, this is not to say a white educator cannot teach students of color, but to recognize that without shared experiences, curating a relatable learning environment may become more difficult. The intersectionality of one's identities cannot be ignored when considering how one relates to the world. However, we as a society inherently know that race plays a part in how the world treats one person from the next. Studies show that students taught by teachers of the same race are more successful, not just in test scores, but in their overall connection to learning. Educators of color are positioned to have a unique understanding of the socio-political, economic, and educational inequalities their students face. So, how can we correct a systemic issue? We must use a multifaceted approach. The most apparent solution would be to adopt a postmodern curriculum, one that is inclusive, multi perspective, and encourages dialogue. We must move towards what Apple and Bean describe as a democratic school. If only it were that easy. We all know it is not so simple to change an education system which has functioned in the same manner for over a century. While the issues we face are complex, there is always something to be done. We can first start by acknowledging the gap and the role we as educators play within the system. Through being aware of the bigger picture, we are better equipped to spot opportunities for change. Opportunities to foster the connection between the student and the classroom in any way possible. Remember, think globally, act locally. We must implement multicultural frameworks that allow students to see their own histories as authentic and valuable within the curriculum. Next, we must bridge the workforce gap. Improved training is essential for all educators to validate students' experiences. But long-term solutions must include intentional initiatives that support and recruit students of color to pursue careers in teaching. By curating an inviting, supportive, and inclusive professional space, educators are more inclined to return and stay in the field.